Hey, Bruce Naylor, your boomer consumer. The two channels hi-fi guy. That's me. I love two-channel stereo. I review vintage gear, new stuff, DACs, amps, headphones, etc. The other day I was having a conversation with my lovely wife of going on 31 years, and she wanted to know why on earth I own not one, not two, not three, but four cassette decks. I'm crazy about cassette decks. I love them. And I wanted to share with you 10 reasons to consider purchasing a cassette deck in 2023. Now, I want to preface this in the beginning by saying that no one out there in the market today builds a new high-quality cassette deck. Not with the same specs and motors and the transports like they did back in the late 70s, 80s, 90s. No, today it's a lot of knockoff, cheap-made components, but I'm talking about your classic cassette decks of yesteryear that were so well made and engineered. Okay, got that out of the way. Okay, reason number one, and I would be remiss not to say probably what most of you would think is nostalgia. Most of us back in the 80s and 90s bought a lot of music on cassette, so we have kind of this. When you play cassettes, and it starts bringing you back to those days and the fun that we had, the people we knew, and what was going on in our lives in that era. And cassette decks were a big part. You know, people had Walkmans, they had portable cassette players, they had them in their car, we had the decks in our homes. Tapes were ubiquitous up until when they weren't. So it brings back a lot of happy memories. Number two, that analog sound. If you like the warmth of vinyl, right? Vinyl has a sound. Analog has a sound, a warmth to it. Now, you might call it pleasant sounding, distortion, whatever. But cassettes also has that great sound. Therefore, you can get that sound that you can't really get so much off of digital. Now, yes, you can get turntables with a USB connection and record it to your PC and do all that. But there's just something about the sound of the cassette. And I am certainly not saying that it is better sounding than CD, streaming, digital, or even vinyl. But it does have a great sound. Some of those decks had outstanding specifications at the time. Speaking of vinyl, right? If you don't have the space for a turntable and then a big collection of records and the budget, well, you can get really good vintage cassette decks at affordable prices or for less money than you can a lot of turntables and then the very expensive records out there on the market. So if you want that kind of vinyl sound, but you don't have the space or budget, a good quality vintage cassette deck can be a money-saving thing. Reason number four, many of us still have cassettes, or we know somebody has a cassette collection. We want to play those cassettes. We want to hear that music. Maybe you can find cassettes at a thrift store. I've been offered boxes of cassettes for just a few bucks, and some people just give them to you. In fact, our local thrift store, when somebody donates cassettes, they throw them in the trash. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Let me know. I'll be happy to pay you some money for them. So having a collection of cassettes, you need something to play them on. A cassette deck is a great way to do it. Number five, making mixtapes, right? Now, of course, we do the modern mixtape is our playlist. But there's something about taking the time and putting together some of your favorite songs on a cassette tape, maybe something from the radio, maybe something from a record, maybe even something from streaming, but whatever. Making those mixtapes is something we used to do back in the day. Maybe it's still part of nostalgia, but it can be a lot of fun putting your own personal mixtape together. Number six, the unique aesthetic. To me, some cassette decks were just absolutely beautiful machines to look at. I just recently picked up a Marantz 5020 cassette deck from 1976. It matches the aesthetic of my Marantz 2230 vintage receiver, and it is absolutely stunning to look at, especially at night, those beautiful lit VU meters, watching that tape go. It's just there's just an aesthetic to these machines that's, to me, so beautiful. And I think probably many of you would agree they're beautiful machines, or can be. Yeah, there were some really butt ugly ones back in the day, but certainly there's a lot of beautiful cassette decks that add a classy look to your rig. Number 7, you know there's still a number of bands actually releasing new indie music on cassette because it's easier to do, cheaper to do. You can, even if you don't have a cassette deck, you can pick up a cassette from them as some kind of memento. But for those do-it-yourselfers out there, it's a great way to record music and do it on the cheap. Number 8, they're still portable. There's still Walkman-like devices being sold brand new today for around $100. Now, these don't have the quality transports the old Walkmans, Sony Walkmans had back in the day, but they can still play cassettes on the go with these machines. Of course you can have your phone. I'm not saying these are better, but I'm saying this is still more practical if you like that analog sound than trying to drag around a record player, that's for sure. Number 9, cassette decks are still relatively inexpensive, even high quality decks back from the 80s and 90s. Now, true, they may need some TLC, and it's always best if you're not technical to have a technician to have some service work on it. Typically, it's things like some lubrication, some cleaning and replacement of belts, and maybe some lights. Nothing really too serious about the maintenance on a lot of these decks, but you can run into problems because these parts, generally cosmetic pieces and things like motors and record and playback heads, are very tough to get if you can replace them at all. So you do need to take care in the purchase of a cassette deck. Which leads me to number 10. If you're a tinkerer and a real true do-it-yourself guy, then buying vintage cassette deck and restoring it can be a lot of fun in and of itself. And when you're done, you're going to have a beautiful machine that can play back music wonderfully, because these machines, many of them had fantastic specs. The old vintage Nakamichis, they had fantastic sound. And some say they could even rival the quality of CDs. And finally, this is a bonus. I think recording on cassettes, the whole process of recording on cassettes, everything from selecting the tape that you're going to use, the source that you're going to use, setting the volume levels, the record levels on the deck, watching the whole process. If you have a 3-head deck, monitoring the audio is just as relaxing and as much fun as getting a record, cleaning the record, putting it on a turntable, dropping the needle. It's just as much fun and very, very relaxing to me. So those are my 10 reasons to consider purchasing a good quality vintage cassette deck in 2023. Now, true, the prices of fully refurbished decks can be quite expensive, but it doesn't have to be. There's still a number in great operating condition that just need a little bit of TLC that you can pick up for just a few $100s and have many, many years of great entertainment. Those are my thoughts. But you know, I want to get your comments down below. And the best comment, well, I'll make a video in response to that comment. Thanks so much for watching. Bruce Naylor, your Boomer Consumer. Have a good one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.